Hey everyone, I'm Mind, and this is set number 72151, Eevee from the all-new LEGO Pokemon theme. This set contains 587 pieces and will retail for $59.99 in the US when it officially releases on February 27th, 2026. This set was gifted to me early for review by the LEGO Group through the LEGO Ambassador Network, but all opinions expressed in this video are entirely my own. If you missed it, I was actually sent all 5 of the new LEGO Pokemon sets, and I'm currently working on building them all because a few of them are pretty big, so let me know in the comments which set you want to see reviewed next, and if there's anything specific you'd like to see in that review. But now, with all of that said, let's take a closer look at this set. So here's a bit of a closer look at the Eevee set, and there's a couple of things I want to say right off the bat. Number one, this set and all the other sets this wave are of course display sets. They're not necessarily meant for play, and they are certainly not minifigure scale. And I know there's a lot of conflicting opinions on that. Some people like it, some people don't. Personally, I am someone who prefers more play scale stuff. I'd rather get builds that fit in with my minifigures and don't break the bank to buy. But with that said, I do feel like this Eevee set sort of strikes a balance between playset and display set, because there's a good bit of posability here, which we'll get into in just a moment. And the price, while $60 is obviously high and it's not going to be for everybody, it's also nowhere near the $200 or $650 that the other sets this wave cost. So I'm glad that even though this is a bit more display focused, it doesn't lean entirely into display. They still gave it posability, they still made it fun, and they made it somewhat more affordable. Though again, I would love to see $10, $20 sets that anyone could get their hands on. In terms of the actual shape and sculpting too, I think this is my favorite of the Pokemon sets. Now, full disclosure, I've not finished building them all yet. I've built Venusaur and Blastoise, I'm in the middle of building Charizard, and I've not even started on Pikachu yet. But based off the ones I've built and official pictures, I genuinely think this one does look the best. It's just the right scale in my opinion, where it's big enough to have all the detail it needs, but it's not too big where some of the shapes will become too awkward to capture. So let's go through it all. First, we'll start at Eevee's face, which is probably the biggest critique I've seen of this set. People don't seem to like how square Eevee's head is, but honestly, if you look at official pictures of Eevee, this does seem pretty accurate. Eevee is just a Pokemon with a somewhat square head, and I think especially when you look at the side profile and you see the jaw that comes up, and it doesn't have that cubic shape on the sides as well. I don't know, it makes that squareness of the head not feel as off to me. I've also seen people compare it to an AirPods case, which I find quite funny. And I mean, I guess somewhat accurate, it does have these very rounded corners, but that's just what rounded plastic looks like. To me, this absolutely feels like Eevee, I'm perfectly happy with this. My one, small critique is up here in the top part of the head. There's a somewhat noticeable drop down that happens in the corners of the head, where the eye plates are raised, the forehead's raised, but yeah, these are a little bit inset. And honestly, I don't know why that is. Maybe they were trying to break up that very square shape to the face by putting a bit more dimension there, but yeah, that feels a little bit awkward to me. That being said, if you wanted to customize that, it probably wouldn't be too difficult to do. If you take this corner piece off and just move everything up by one plate, there's enough room to do that. And I think if it was attached here by default, it would honestly look better, but it's not a huge deal. I think it still looks fine as is. Eevee uses cheese slopes on its head to be like little tufts of hair. I find that very cute. And of course, I've not even pointed out the face, but yeah, everything here is printed, not a sticker, which makes me very happy to see. There's a few graphics all throughout this set, but not a single sticker. Every single design element you see is going to be printed, which is very nice to see. It gives it that higher quality feel that I want to see from these 18+ display sets. And not only is it printed, but it's printed well. Like, the eyes are really sharp, the mouth is vibrant. Again, it really just does feel like Eevee. I mentioned it a second ago, but yeah, I think the shaping around the sides of the head looks really good too. And the back is definitely not as smooth as the front, but honestly, I think it still works. Eevee has a lot of fur, so you can see this is just like fluffiness. It doesn't have to be this perfect smooth design. The head, of course, has 2 ears attached to it, and these can actually be posed a little bit. You can point them in like this, or move them down like this, so that can get you a bit more motion when you're posing the model. These are another point where I've seen a lot of critiques online, but again, personally, I don't mind them. I think the shaping's really good. I think some people wanted to see them a little more inset, like the brown part is inside of the ear rather than on the outside. And yes, that would be more accurate, but I think it would force this to be a bit too bulky. I think having this really thin strip with the lighter fur color works really well, and you would not be able to accomplish that if you had the brown parts inset. There is a little bit of weirdness, like they use this bracket piece right here to create some dimension, and I guess I kind of get what they're going for, but it does feel a little out of place to me. And then there is just open brackets on the backs of the ears too, which I mean, I guess, sure, that works. But I don't know if it was necessarily needed. It would probably look better if it was just flat. But again, maybe they're trying to go for that fluffiness. There are some secrets hidden inside the face, but I'll show that off in a moment. If you already watched my YouTube short though, you know what that is. The head connects to the body on a single ball joint, and it has a pretty good range of motion. You can see I can spin in a full 360, and there's not a ton of posability like up and down. You kind of look up a little bit, down a little bit. It is somewhat static in that sense, but I've played plenty of modern Pokemon with like the 3D models. I've seen Eevee so many times, and this does feel like the right amount of motion for an Eevee head. Ball joint's tucked away pretty nicely too. There's not like a huge gap between the body and the head. Obviously from this angle with the camera you can see it, but in regular use it's pretty hidden away. After the head we come down into the body, and this is where we have like this light tan tuft of fur. And this is definitely one of the best looking parts of this model in my opinion. It's pretty much perfect. They use a very nice combination of pieces to give that fluffy texture. I especially love this one right here. This is one of my favorite LEGO parts just because of how versatile it is. It can be used for fur, it can be used for stone, it can be used for snow. And I like that they don't go too heavy with it here. It still keeps the very cartoony design, but we have it a little bit. We got one right here, one here at the front, and then another on the side, and finally one more on the back. There are some elevation changes, just like on the head, however, this time around I think it actually works really well. It makes the fluffiness seem natural, and it's not too smooth. And this also does a good job to cover up some of the uglier parts of the build. For example, it creates a really smooth transition from the chest into the underside. The joint that the legs are attached to is fully covered up as well without restricting any mobility. You could still move these legs forward and back. And then we come to the very back right here where we have the tail. Now I think the actual tail structure is probably the best part of this set. Again, they go for that very fluffy look, but I think it's perfectly done. We've got more of that snowy, fluffy texturing piece, but then we also have Nexonite shields, wedge pieces, curved slopes. It all comes together to create a very fluffy looking tail, but also a very consistent looking one. It's topped off with a cone piece at the end, which gives a very iconic LEGO feel. And this tail's posable as well. You can swing it back and forth as well as rotate it a full 360, so that way you can get even more motion out of it. Now the joint here is a bit more obvious than the one on the head, and I don't think that's the end of the world. I mean, you need a joint to allow that posability. I will say I wish the colors were different. I wish these had been recolored to be Eevee's colors, because they just use dark bluish gray instead. And it's not like these are mini ball joints, like these pieces are able to be recolored, but yeah, it would be a new recolor for this set, so I assume it was just a budget thing. They decided not to recolor it because that would be more expensive. But when you're paying for a display model like this, where display is the only real focus, colors like this really should be changed. It's not like the ugliest thing in the world, at least they're a consistent color, right? It's not two separate colors you have here, and it's nothing too bright, it's gray, that's pretty neutral. And especially for the tail posed like this, like you're not really gonna see it, but yeah, in a perfect world, that would definitely be colored correctly. Finally, we have the legs, which are very smooth and cartoony, but I really like how these were done. Posability's on them great. I like that the feet hinge separately to get it in like a running pose if you want to, but you can also move the entire leg forward if you want. Here we can also find another printed piece for the paws at the front, and all four of those are printed in this set. And I will say they did a really good job to make sure there was no ugly colors showing anywhere in this set from any angle. Sometimes LEGO will leave somewhat gappy parts, you can see really bright colors on the inside, but that's not the case here. Even on the insides of these legs, all of the colors fit. And the only colors that are slightly off is we have dark tan right here and dark tan for this joint at the neck. But even still, that feels like it's in the realm of everything else. It doesn't feel out of place. The gray right here is the only color that truly feels like incorrect. The hind legs have a bit more bulk to them and they're also posable. If it's not clear, the legs can only move forward and back. They're on a ratchet joint, so there's no like side-to-side motion. But I think that's what Eevee should have. They can move very far forward and then a little bit back. The tail just gets in the way. We've got some more printed pieces with pink on it for the back of the legs. And of course, those same printed toes at the front. The posability on this model is great. It's one of my favorite aspects of it, because every pose you put it in feels very natural. This may not have been the best first example, because this is sort of like a running and jumping pose, but if you have it displayed more like this, the legs and the feet are in the perfect position. Walking poses like this look really natural too, though, and one of the things that surprised me most is you can even get it into like a sitting pose. So for a model that's more focused on display, and especially comparing this to the other Pokemon sets that are even bigger, I'm actually very impressed by how much motion this has. I'd say it's pretty much perfect. And I think that's all I have to show for the actual main model, but there's a few more things I want to show off in this video. First, there's a few Easter eggs inside the build. As I'm sure many of you know, when you build a set like this, often the bricks inside are very colorful, and that's for a couple of reasons. Sometimes it's because the colors inside are cheaper to produce than the colors on the outside, so they save money by putting cheaper colors where you're not going to see them. Other times it's to make the building experience more intuitive, because it's easier to find a part when it's not the same color as everything else. But yeah, this set's no exception. It has a lot of different colors on the inside, but what's really cool is the specific colors they chose do seem to be a reference. Because most of the, like, quote-unquote helper bricks in the set, not all of them, but most of them, use one of these three colors, blue, yellow, or orange, which is the colors of the original three Eevee evolutions from Generation 1 of Pokemon, Vaporeon, Flareon, and Jolteon. And that's present all throughout the build. The helper bricks in the tail, the face, the body, almost all of them are yellow, orange, or blue. Now I say almost because there is some exceptions. There's a few whites in there and there's a few grays in there. And I think that's likely a budget thing, like they're not going to recolor any pieces to get this reference, so if they needed a helper brick that was not one of these colors, they probably switched to one of those. I think it would have been really cool if every helper brick was the color of an evolution, whether doing like green for Leafeon or pink for Espeon. I would have liked if they found something for every Eevee evolution. But still, I think this alone is a neat Easter egg that makes the building experience more fun. And then there is one other reference that's a bit more explicit. I gotta take poor Eevee's head apart for this. Behind the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and everything is 8 different tiles, and these actually match the colors of all 8 Eevee evolutions. So there's that same shade of blue for Vaporeon, yellow for Jolteon, orange for Flareon, but then you also have pink for Sylveon, this like light lavender purple for Espeon, black for Umbreon, a light green for Leafeon, and then a lighter blue to be Glaceon. Here you can see some of the other helper bricks in here, so yeah, there's white in here and black in here as well, but every single colorful helper brick is either orange, yellow, or blue. And then one more thing before I end off this video is I want to show off the instructions for this set, because it is an 18+ set, so you get the little write-up that all 18+ sets have, and what they do for the Pokemon sets is actually pretty cool. I guess I've not really said it in this video, but I'm a huge Pokemon fan. I love Pokemon so much, so seeing things like this are awesome. It gives you a Pokedex entry for Eevee, and then all the details you actually see in the Pokedex. Category, height, weight, the genders it can be, the abilities that it can have in-game, which is actually really cool. They do not include its hidden ability here, that's something of note. Then its type and its weaknesses. We've got a screenshot from the Pokedex entry in Pokemon Yellow here too, which is neat to call back to one of the first games it appeared in. And then there's a Pokedex entry for the LEGO version of Eevee, where they point out the articulation that it has, the piece count, the height, and the weight. And we've got like the Dream World art for Eevee here, and then the official LEGO set image here. And then after that, they tell you a bit more about Eevee, as well as advertise the other LEGO Pokemon sets. We've got a screenshot from Let's Go Eevee here, which is cool to see they're doing some of the more modern stuff as well. It's not just fully nostalgia bait. And then they're like, yeah, buy Pikachu, buy the starters as well. And then after that, we actually have screenshots from Legends Arceus telling you about the Eevee evolutions. And then they talk a bit more about the model here. But now, overall, what are my thoughts on this set? Personally, I love this one. I think this is the best of the Pokemon sets. It is expensive, but it's not outrageous. $60 is a lot more digestible than $650. And I think the model is genuinely really well done. The posability is amazing. I love how expressive you can get this thing. All of the pieces are printed, and this might sound like a bit of a funny point, but it actually uses a lot of somewhat rare colors. It's not often you see an entire set built out of these browns and these tans, so that makes it feel somewhat special as well. I'm not going to act like the price is the best thing ever. Like, if you're not interested in it, obviously don't buy it. But while having a somewhat small footprint, the build is very dense. Like, it feels heavier than it should be because there's a lot of parts packed in. And every part that it uses does feel necessary and intentional. It's not like part stuffing, which I don't even know if that's a real thing. But no, it feels like the size it should be. Would I have liked for it to be a little cheaper? Absolutely, but honestly, I wouldn't see this going for less than like $50. So price-wise, it's not like an amazing deal, but I think it makes sense for this. And then yeah, the actual model, as I said, is awesome. I love how they capture that fluffiness of Eevee's tail and the chest. The posability on the legs is perfect. This looks animated and fun, and is a good representation of the character. I honestly think the sculpting is amazing. My only real critique is like the upper part of the head where it dips down a little bit. That feels a little bit awkward to me. But honestly, that's a very minor thing that could be fixed pretty easily. And every other part of the model is so well done. The tail's definitely my favorite part. I think that looks great. I guess I wish that gray joint was recolored, but again, very minor thing. Yeah, I'm incredibly happy with this one. I think this is a good start to the LEGO Pokemon theme. As I mentioned at the beginning, I would love to see smaller sets and smaller scale stuff, but for a LEGO Pokemon display model, I'd say this is pretty close to perfect. But of course, those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think of this set in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and let me know in the comments which LEGO Pokemon set do you want to see me do an early review of next. But as for this video, I think that's about all I have to say, so thanks for watching everybody, I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!